Hey everyone, welcome back to Coach Doc Ministries. In today's video, we're continuing our spiritual discipline series and talking about Bible study. Why study the Bible if it isn't literally true, and our method to make it as meaningful in today's world as possible. It's going to be a good one. Let's get to it. Let's start with a quick discussion of what the Bible is. On this channel, we don't refer to the Bible as the infallible and inerrant Word of God. It's a series of books, Old Testament and New Testament, written across roughly 1,000 years. It has many authors, multiple schools of thought on topics such as God, religious life, righteousness, and historical events. While we do not teach the Bible as a history book, there are absolutely threads of history that run throughout the various books. There are people, places, and events mentioned in the Bible that have been attested to through both archaeology and the historical record. However, it is considered as a holy or sacred text because we as a community have accepted it as such. The Bible's stories, whether historical or literary, are true for what they teach. Just because a story isn't historical doesn't mean there isn't something to be learned. Just because a story isn't scientifically plausible doesn't mean there isn't a moment for reflection. These documents have been at the foundation of Western religious and spiritual life for over 3,000 years. The Bible holds a special place because we recognize it as such. So why study the Bible? Jews refer to the Bible as Torah, which literally means instruction. A better translation would be the teaching, as the word Torah comes from the same root as the Hebrew word for teacher and guide, one who shows the way. Quite simply, we study the Bible, the Torah, as a guide for taking lessons for the future from stories from the past. You see, the Bible's purpose is not as a rule book, rather more like a mirror. As we read these stories, we derive comparisons as to how we should or shouldn't behave in a similar situation. Let's be honest. If the Bible is read strictly for plot, it's a disturbing, appalling, and strange document. But the Bible isn't intended to be read for plot. It's meant to be interpreted for meaning. Studying the Bible is a process that sees each generation interpreting in the light of their present-day understanding. In Judaism, every generation is charged with interpreting Torah for its own time. Yes, the previous interpretations have meaning, but more importantly, it is the meaning for the present day. At its root, study involves exploration, challenging, questioning, entering into a conversation with the voices of our past and applying them to our present and our future. And this process of study and interpretation isn't just for the priestly class or for the scholar, it's for everyone. The obligation to interpret sacred text was granted to all who throughout Jewish history have disagreed with each other. There's an old Jewish saying, there are 70 faces of the Torah. It means for every sentence in the Torah, one can find many different explanations, lessons, or meanings. We may all read the same words of the Bible, but we hear with different ears depending on our religious traditions and our backgrounds. Think about this. If there were only a single correct interpretation of the Bible, it would have been agreed to a long time ago. The Bible is meant to be relevant to each one of us. Every verse in the Bible is an invitation. We study the Bible to take lessons for the future from stories of the past. While the fundamentalists say, if that's what it says and that's what it means, the approach on this channel has always been, if that's what it says, then what does it mean? Now on to how to study the Bible. By studying the Bible, we mean to bring the text into our present day to use as lessons to improve ourselves. Our study method has two inspirations. The first is Jewish theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was one of the leading theologians in all religious circles in the 20th century. He argued the Bible was a record of God's search for human beings and the human search for God. He referred to the Bible as midrash, that is, an interpretive story. He approached the Bible stories with the prerequisite of an interpretation was needed to reveal the true meaning. The second inspiration is a group of players, Marcus Borg and John Dominic Crossan of the Progressive Christian Movement. Much like Heschel's midrash approach, they view the Bible as a parable. They define parable as a form of language about meaning, not factuality. The meaning of a parable, its parabolic truth, does not depend upon its factuality. Put simply, a story doesn't need to be historically or scientifically accurate to have meaning. A parable is a story whose truth lies in its meaning. In the parable or midrash approach, interpretation and meaning, not factuality, are emphasized. All three scholars used a similar method, approaching the biblical stories not from a literal or factual perspective, but as a literary device in which characters represent ideas with deeper symbolic meaning. Heschel's approach has been called devotional philosophy, and that is how we refer to Bible study on this channel. Studying the Bible using a midrash or a parable approach grants us the ability to find meaning in any text, even when the surface of the text does not seem relevant to our present-day sensibilities. So on this channel, we teach to read the Bible stories as parables, not historical events, and seek to find spiritual meaning from them. Yes, there is history that runs throughout the Bible, but we do not approach it as a history book. It is a guide for religious and spiritual matters, so we seek to find meaning in the text. When you read a story, mentally put yourself in it as a character. Ask yourself, what would you have done in a similar situation, and why? Or take an aspect of the story and ask yourself, what significance can be derived from it? Is there a moral of the story? And how does it apply to my life in the 21st century? It is way easier to explain this with an example. So in Exodus 1, we read the Pharaoh forced the Israelites to build cities using mud bricks. So we put ourselves in the story, let's say as Pharaoh. And instead of the mud bricks being actual building material, look at them as the days of your life. What are you building with your mud bricks? Are you like Pharaoh, building monuments to yourself with a big house and fancy cars? Are you so concerned with the next gadget or upgrade that you don't appreciate what you already have? Are you so busy making a living that you're not making a life? Another example would be Genesis 1, right at the beginning of everything. The text tells us God created each day and it was good. We put ourselves in this story, in this case, as God. We create the world we live in every single day. Is what you're creating every day good? Are you creating a world where you are a positive impact to your family, your friends, and community? Or are you angry and negative? Is the world you create daily a good one? A positive one for you and those around you? Or are there aspects of your life that need to be changed for the better? This method isn't only applicable to the Old Testament. We can use it with the stories of Jesus as well. For example, there were women at the cross when Jesus was crucified. They couldn't help him at all. They couldn't relieve his pain or try to help him down. If they'd have done so, they'd ended up right there beside him on their own cross. Instead, just being there with him was all they could do. It was the only thing they could do. So we put ourselves in the story as the women. Are we doing everything we can to help those around us in pain? And I don't necessarily mean in a hospice situation like Jesus was in, but in everyday life. Are we doing what we can to comfort those around us who are struggling, who are hurting, who just need us to be there? Sometimes just being there for someone is all we can do, and are you willing to act? As you can see, asking questions is the key to this method of Bible study. We do not teach you what to think, but instead equip you to think for yourself. I want you to use the Bible as a stimulus to ask yourself the hard questions, because the difficult answers often lead to the greatest changes in our lives. Use the Bible as a mirror, reflecting upon your personal choices. At the end of the day, one of the key tenets of a religious or spiritual life is to improve yourself, to become a better person. The Bible can be both a tool and a catalyst on that journey. Approach its pages respectfully, as thousands of generations have before us. Use this method of devotional philosophy to pursue and uncover spiritual meaning from the text. Seek to find new insights with every reading, not because it has changed, but because you have changed. I hope you enjoyed today's video. As always, like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of this type of content. If you have specific topics you'd like to see covered, please leave a comment below and we'll work to address them in upcoming videos. Thank you.